violence are an attack on our democracy itself.
The hunt is on for a suspect who's behind the wave of suspicious packages sent to prominent Democrats.
The president called for unity as John Brennan pointed the finger directly at the president.
We want all sides to come together in peace and harmony.
Donald Trump too often has helped to incite some of these feelings of anger.
You should never make those personal, and you should never think that violence is a way to settle our political differences.
Mexican officials say the caravan is dwindling, with hundreds sick and exhausted. There are about 3,600 left in the march, with more than 1,000 miles to go.
People just rushing across the border and overwhelming the Border Patrol. I can't imagine anything that would be a better argument for the wall.
This will be the election of the caravan, Kavanaugh, law and order, tax cuts, and common sense.
Right to a Fox News alert, a nationwide manhunt intensifying for the person or persons behind a string of suspicious packages sent to prominent Democratic leaders.
The targets include the Obamas, the Clintons, and possibly Joe Biden. None of the devices went off, thank goodness, and nobody was hurt.
All right, President Trump now calling for unity and vowing to catch the person or persons responsible. And the reason why it could be person or persons is the packages look remarkably similar, and some people say it's got to be the same person, or at least they got to be on the same page.
Meanwhile, Todd Pyro is in the newsroom with the very latest on the investigation. Todd?
Good morning. Right now, authorities are searching for a package reportedly addressed to Joe Biden because it is similar to those addressed to other Democratic officials. The package was originally sent to Biden's old address in Delaware, but was returned to sender. So far, there's been no indication of anything actually being found at Biden's home. We are also getting a look at the package sent to CNN. The AP reporting it was made from PVC pipe covered with black tape, packed with powder and glass, and hooked up to a small battery. Law enforcement says they think one person or group is responsible for these packages. The FBI director saying this is the agency's top priority, with most of the devices being analyzed right now at the FBI lab at Quantico. You can see how widespread these targets are. Threats made against the Obamas' D.C. home, the Clintons' New York home, CNN, and others. Here's Arkansas Congressman Rick Crawford on a possible motive.
Probably designed to get attention. It was designed to be caught, and while it may be a device that could function, I think it was designed more than anything to strike fear in the hearts of those people who they were intended to target, not necessarily to kill them.
The FBI said it is possible more packages were mailed, so law enforcement remains on high alert this morning. Security pretty tight here in New York City, with the National Guard at bridges, tunnels, and airports, and extra police at media organizations. Steve Ainsley, Brian?
All right, Todd, thank you very much.
You know, yeah, it remains to be seen whether these bombs actually were made to go off or just to intimidate. They are similar in that they were filled with shards of glass
and powder. And you can see on all the newspapers, it's front page, and they're all addressed to these different political individuals, all of them liberal or Democrats, prominent individuals, and they all had the return address of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who lives down in Florida, right? But they each had a small battery that was about 6 inches long, packed with the glass and powder. They were made from PVC pipes, covered with black tape, and then the labels all look the same. And all of them had 6 forever stamps.
Yeah, exactly. On the front page of the New York Times, the fourth paragraph, it says, none of the devices harmed anybody. And that really is so many, 8 mail bombs. None of them went off. Why? Thankfully. None of the devices harmed anybody, and it was not immediately clear whether any of them could have. One law enforcement official said investigators were examining the possibility that they were hoax devices that were constructed to look like bombs, but would not have exploded.
Yeah, it started with George Soros on Monday, and then we know what happened yesterday. Meanwhile, the President of the United States had a rally last night. He also spoke before his opioid conference, and both times, along with the First Lady, he addressed these bombs that came in the mail.
My highest duty, as you know, as president, is to keep America safe. The federal government is conducting an aggressive investigation, and we will find those responsible, and we will bring them to justice. Any acts or threats of political violence are an attack on our democracy itself. We want all sides to come together in peace and harmony. The media also has a responsibility to set a civil tone and to stop the endless hostility and constant negative and oftentimes false attacks and stories. Have to do it.
He made a good point. He also said that if you have a disagreement, settle it the right way, settle it in a peaceful way at the ballot box. Go and vote.
I mean, remember, Steve Scalise was gunned down practicing baseball by a Bernie Sanders supporter. We know about the Maxine Waters calling to go after and harass Trump officials. We know about Eric Holder saying, when we go high, we kick them.
Hillary Clinton saying you can't have civility.
You can't have civility. So I think it all plays into this.
Well, nonetheless, even though it is not known who sent these devices through the mail, there were a number of people on television over the last 12 hours or so who knew who to blame, and that would be the president.
If you look at who they've targeted so far, it's almost like they're following Donald Trump's Twitter feed.
We have a president who has talked for a couple of years now about imprisoning his political rival in Hillary Clinton, who has encouraged violence against the media.
We are in an era now where violence seems to have license by the President of the United States.
The president certainly has encouraged this kind of rhetoric. This is what happened when the president calls you the enemy of the people.
We did not hear the president accept any bit of responsibility for something that he and his supporters do and lead.
Donald Trump too often has helped to incite some of these feelings of anger, if not violence.
And if you want to look at John Brennan's tweets, you would wonder how settling he has been and the role he may have played in all of this.
He was working at CNN, or he does have a job at CNN, and that's why that bomb was sent to him at CNN.
But was he working at CNN? Because they misspelled his name, sent it there, but he works for NBC.
Here's the thing about...
oh, you're right. He does work for MSNBC, not CNN.
Here's the thing about all these devices where they were labeled. Everybody knows that when you send something to the White House or to Congress, or to somebody who works on television, there is a screening, facility in the case of government officials off campus, or there's somebody who is in your mailroom who goes through these things. So the people that these were addressed to never really opened them. Nonetheless, we don't know who sent them.
Someone crazy sent them, and Eric Trump was on with Sean Hannity last night and was reminding everyone neither the Democrats or Republicans are to blame for this. You can't blame. This is a crazy person. This is someone who has lost their mind. Someone that's able to do this is not right in the head, and he reminded us of that on Hannity last night. Listen.
These people should be hunted down and they should be thrown in jail for a very, very long time. It's that simple. It doesn't matter which party it is. Hey, last year I had white powder sent to my house. Don had white powder sent to his house. You know, the white powder literally blew up in my wife's face, right? And the FBI and the Secret Service, they caught the guy and they threw him in jail. They need to do the exact same thing to this person. They need to hunt this person down. They need to throw the person in jail, and they need to throw away the key, because honestly, the lack of civility is unreal. This isn't the country we are. This isn't who we are.
Rick Hahn is a retired FBI and explosive counterterror expert. He thinks the person's going to get caught in a couple of weeks. He says surveillance outside, these cameras that we have everywhere are going to help unmask who this is.
We're going to talk to the president's press secretary, Sarah Sanders, live 8:30. Get the very latest. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. According to El Universal, which is a Mexican news outlet, there are 14,000 people now in this caravan, although the United Nations is estimating it at 7,200. Something like 500 of them have decided to drop out and took bus rides back home. And yesterday the number was, according to, I believe, the Washington Post, 1,700 had asked for asylum in Mexico.
Yeah, well, the Alex Mensing, he's the head of Pueblos and Fronteras, and that's that group that organized the caravan in April. He's also involved in these caravans, and he said some of them are not going to make it to the United States. Some of them are going to hunker down in Mexico. You have the 1,700 that are seeking asylum there. He said they're going to go to different spots on the border because some of them have kids in the United States, and they're going to go to different places to try to get in. But it will disperse. He says he doesn't think he was estimating 10,000 are in this caravan, in the first caravan, and he says they're not all going to try to make it to the United States.
Yeah, so they're still about 1,000 miles away. They're doing about 45 miles a day, but they're starting to eye these trains where they hop on top and they come barreling into our border. The President of the United States is worried about it, but plans on taking action.
The Democrat Party is openly encouraging caravan after caravan of illegal aliens to violate our laws and break into our country. When our country is assaulted by thousands and thousands of people marching, and they openly say, we're going to go into the country, we can't do that. It's unfair to you, but it's also unfair to thousands and thousands of people that have gone through a legal process. Some are waiting on line 10 years. Everything is perfect, and they don't get in, but other people just march right in. It will not happen. You watch. It won't happen. We can't let it happen.
So the president also said anybody who crosses will be sent right back. Apparently the administration has not yet settled on a plan for what happens if 10,000 people show up, but the president has also made it very clear.
A lot of pressure on Mexico now.
He said, you know what, I'll use the military if I have to.
But Steve, that's what you meant. What you just said is aspirational. That's what he hopes, but there's no proof that we can turn them around. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough people. And if they're going to get processed, they're going to get through because everybody gets through. We have 1,000 apprehensions a day, even without the caravan. Right now, the laws do not allow us to send them back if they're from Central and South America.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. They know the laws, too, down there.
Yeah.
They're aware. They know that if they put a foot on American soil, it's catch and release.
And one of the laws here is to toss to Jillian. We have to, by law.
It's not the law, but it is the rules. We like to follow the rules. Yeah. Good morning, guys. Okay, so police are questioning a man accused of killing 2 people at a Kroger supermarket. Gregory Bush charged with murder after police say he shot one person inside the store and one in the parking lot near Louisville, Kentucky.
Some people started running, and they said, he's shooting. So I went to get down on the ground. I'm in the store shopping. I mean, you don't think something like this is going to happen.
Witnesses say the killings could be racially motivated. CIA Director Gina Haspel set to brief President Trump today on the death of Jamal Khashoggi. She's back from Turkey, where she reportedly listened to an audio recording of the apparent brutal murder inside the Saudi consulate. The Saudis have claimed Khashoggi was killed during a fight, though the Crown Prince is now calling it a heinous act. A Broadway show lighting up the Florida gubernatorial debate. Democrat Andrew Gillum firing back at claims an FBI agent gave him Hamilton tickets.
I did go and see Hamilton. I arrived at the theater and received my ticket from my brother. But I take responsibility for not having asked more questions. But let me tell you, I'm running for governor. In the state of Florida, we got a lot of issues. In fact, we got 99 issues, and Hamilton ain't one of them.
Records obtained by the Tampa Bay Times show a former lobbyist sent a text to Andrew Gillum in 2016 reading, quote, Mike Miller and the crew have tickets for us for Hamilton tonight at 8 p.m. Miller was an undercover FBI agent investigating corruption in Tallahassee, where Gillum is the mayor. Let's look at your headlines. I will send it back to you.
So he got the tickets from an FBI guy.
Right.
He says his brother.
We don't care about Hamilton, but the FBI might. Thanks, Jillian.
Yep.
All right. Coming up straight ahead, how will the Trump administration stop that caravan of migrants when they finally reach our southern border? National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd here to explain.
Plus, Dan Bongino here live on the immigration crisis and those suspicious packages. Straight ahead.
The Democrat Party is openly encouraging caravan after caravan of illegal aliens to violate our laws and break into our country. Don't worry about it, folks. You have nothing to worry about.
President Trump lashing out at Democrats as that caravan of migrants edges closer and closer to our border.
And our next guest warning that a so-called deep state is actively working against President Trump and his tough border policies.
President of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, is here to explain. Brandon, you're going to tell me that all Border Patrol, the higher-ups and the lower, are not on the same page to secure the border?
Well, what we know is back in March of 2016, when Border Patrol agents endorsed President Trump, there was a huge backlash from management within the agency. In fact, the deputy commissioner at the time in March, and this was witnessed by several individuals, he called me and he asked me to rescind my endorsement. That person has since been the political appointee of the president, and we know that they just didn't support the president. So if you look at the current situation, under the Flores settlement agreement, we have to release children within 20 days unless we send them to state licensed facilities. There's nothing in the settlement agreement that doesn't say that we can't send parents to state licensed facilities as well, and that's what the agency should have been working on all the way back in 2017.
So let me get this straight. Someone that's now appointed by the president to work on this very issue, he did not support the president?
He did not. Again, in March of 2016, it's Commissioner McAleenan.
So Commissioner McAleenan is not even on the same page as the president right now, and he's got as powerful position as there is.
Yeah, if you look at it, I'm floored that happened. But again, that's the politics of the issue. Unfortunately, the person that chose Commissioner McAleenan was not the president himself. In fact, if you look at the New York Times said that there was a huge argument over who the commissioner should be, and unfortunately, the Secretary of Homeland Security won out on that selection.
Well, Brandon, you're brave to come out with this information right now. Let's talk about what the options are, because if these migrants know all they have to do is cross the border, bring a child with them, claim asylum, and then they get into our country, and like Brian's always said, they can take off their devices on their legs and go free. Only 2% are showing up for their court hearings. What's to say that all 100% of this group is not going to try to claim asylum and do that very thing when they get to the border?
Well, that's the trend right now. If you look back in April of this year, the first caravan that was organized, they came and they played a high-stakes game of poker with the United States government. The president said that all of these people would be held in custody pending their asylum or deportation proceedings, and Puebla Sin Frontera said no, they're not going to, and so they organized this caravan. They came across, they crossed the border illegally, and we did in fact release them. Now that has spurred a new caravan, but this caravan is much larger.
Yeah.
Brandon Judd says we can't stop them, and people in the organization don't care. That's unbelievable. Brandon Judd, thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
20 minutes after the top of the hour, what do Wisconsin voters think of President Trump's performance so far? Rachel Compass Duffy asked her hometown crowd at his rally last night. She's going to join us live.
We're back with a Fox News alert and a live look in Lower Manhattan right now via helicopter.
Wow.
Currently, the New York City police and fire departments are looking into a suspicious package found near a building in the Tribeca neighborhood. It's unclear how or if this is related to the string of threats made against prominent Democrats over the last 48 hours. We will continue to follow this and bring you the very latest.
In fact, yeah, what we do is we'll split the screen with it, because remember how yesterday started. We find out around 9:30 that something was going on with the Clintons, and it was screened out before it had a chance to arrive. The day before, it was George Soros, and they got to his mailbox with his package that didn't detonate, nor do we believe it had blasting cap. And then last afternoon, we find out about the Maxine Waters package. We found out about the Brennan package. We found out Debbie Wasserman Schultz was on the return of just about everyone's. And then you think, what happened today? What is going on in Tribeca and downtown, and were all these packages mailed out at the same time? They just get to these places at different times.
I don't know. Everyone's on high alert. Yesterday in New York, when we were all getting news alerts of another suspicious package being found here, another one there, you heard sirens all around the city of New York, which is completely normal.
Sure.
But when you are learning about this news and you hear the sirens, everyone on the sidewalk was kind of looking around just to see, is it in this area? Where are they going? Because we're all on high alert now.
We certainly are. So that's why when there is news of a suspicious package, given the fact that down in that particular neighborhood, there are a number of prominent, very famous celebrities who live there. And we're just keeping an eye on what is going on down in Lower Manhattan. And there you can see right there.
Well, I will say this.
Zoom in.
If you're looking to line up the critics of the president, The ones that were lined up yesterday certainly are in that lineup when Brennan and Holder and President Obama and Hillary Clinton. And then you think downtown, the man who started the Tribeca Film Festival is Robert De Niro, and there's no one who has been more direct or more violent in his language than Robert De Niro.
Well, but that's all speculation. We don't know. We don't know who's being targeted here, or if it's related to those suspicious packages that have been sent out to the lawmakers.
We've got reporters en route and producers, and we'll try to figure that out. In the meantime, let's switch gears. President Trump last night rallied supporters in Wisconsin with only 12 days left before the midterms.
This will be the election of the caravan, Kavanaugh, law and order, tax cuts, and common sense. That's what it is, common sense.
All right, Fox News contributor Rachel Campbell-Duffy attended last night's rally in her home state to see what the people of Wisconsin had to say. And Rachel, it was kind of tough for a rally. Usually the president just lets it rip, but not in the light of what was happening leading up to that rally. How did he handle it?
Well, first of all, good morning to all of you. It's so nice to be with you this early in the morning. Yeah, you know, he kind of joked about it. There were a couple times where he said, you know, I usually say, you're a liberal socialist, and today I'm going to say, you're a liberal socialist. So he kind of joked about how he had to keep his tone down, and that he was on his best behavior. So definitely he was keeping it under control in light of what was happening.
Yeah, he said the media has a responsibility to stop reporting false news and to stop the endless hostility. And he said, if you disagree, then you can peacefully disagree at the ballot box. What did people in the audience think about him being there and think about his speech?
Well, the energy was so palpable. By the way, it was a who's who of Wisconsin politics. Paul Ryan was there, Scott Walker, Reince Priebus flew in. This was my husband's home district. He was there, Senator Ron Johnson. Here's a clip from some of the rock star politicians in Wisconsin that I ran into.
Yeah, well, this is purely an act of terrorism. So I was pleased with what the president said today. Justice will be done. We have to find these people who are responsible for them, hold them responsible. This is an act of terrorism in our democracy. We need to have a vibrant and civil dialogue about how to make this country better. And there's no place for this kind of terrorism.
Any alleged attempt out there of terrorism against any American is really an attempt against all of us. So I think we stand united, Republicans and Democrats, to say we will always stand against terrorism, no matter who it's against. We're Americans first.
And a lot of the people I spoke to in the crowd, by the way, Ainsley, Brian, and Steve, they said, listen, conservatives are the ones who really know what it feels like to have that kind of hate thrown at them, whether it's on college campuses. People also in the crowd complained to me that outside of a rally like this, they felt unsafe wearing their Trump gear. So that tells you a little bit about the political environment out there.
Yeah, I know Governor Walker has his hands full. He's trailing in most polls, but he's always surprised people when it came to voting day. Rachel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Rachel. Good to see you.
You got it.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead on this Thursday morning, remember when Hillary Clinton said this?
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for.
Well, yesterday she had a different message, and Dan Bongino says it could be a little too late. He's going to join us next with the next.
The safety of the American people is my highest and absolute priority. I have just concluded a briefing with the FBI, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the U.S. Secret Service. The full weight of our government is being deployed to conduct this investigation and bring those responsible for these despicable acts to justice. We will spare no resources or expense in this effort.
Yep, we need to find out who's responsible. Let's bring in Dan Bongino, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, and author of the new book, Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Hey, Dan, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We've heard experts say they need to look at surveillance video. It'll probably take maximum 2 weeks to find out who did this. They're going to gather fingerprints. What's the next step to ensure that we catch this person that's behind the suspicious packages?
Well, the Secret Service has a pretty detailed memorandum of understanding with the FBI. They don't investigate these assassination attempts or things like this for obvious reasons. If it were to, say, expose a hole in the security plan, which this didn't, by the way, the Secret Service did great, they don't want the Secret Service investigating. So the FBI will most likely be looking at one of the things that I think is going to be a giveaway here, guys, and Ainsley, is the label. You know, when I was doing fraud cases, specifically counterfeiting, one of the things we investigated was called P-notes, computer printed fake money. And it'll leave a certain signature in the printing. So I believe the printed labels are going to give away some incredible clues as to where or what type of, at minimum, what type of printer this was. And that'll be one of the big clues in addition to fingerprints.
What about...
it leaves a signature on it.
Dan, what about the facilities? So you say to yourself, how does something get delivered to the Clintons? And you go back to those facilities, well, how does something get delivered to Washington, D.C.? What path would it take? And then the video cameras outside. I'm wondering, on government buildings, is there a standard that we could count on that might reveal who dropped this off?
Yeah, I mean, the process here, whether it was courier or U.S. mail, this person's going to be caught. I mean, if it was a courier, he had to obviously pay a courier or someone to do it. They're going to know who the courier was paid by. If it was U.S. mail, the tracking systems have gotten elaborately better since the anthrax scare. They're going to find that out as well. And Brian, let me just say as well, it's outside of the pixelation and things on the printer, there are other clues as well on these items that are very difficult to stop, especially with what looks like about 9 devices now. Fingerprints. It's almost impossible to keep a fingerprint, especially with the use of, remember guys, all that packing tape. That's how you get fingerprints. You use tape and powder. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to keep the clues out because the devices didn't detonate.
That's right.
Which is another interesting thing, by the way.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I quoted, by the way, for the folks who are watching right now, we're splitting the screen with Dan, and we're looking at Lower Manhattan, where there has been a call to the police where apparently there's some sort of suspicious package. We don't know who made the call. We don't know whether or not it is a prominent American. We're just keeping an eye on that. But Dan, going back to your point about none of them exploded, the New York Times says one law enforcement official said investigators were examining the possibility that they were hoax devices that were constructed to look like bombs but would not have exploded. What does that mean?
Well, Steve, this makes all the sense in the world, what you just said. I don't know. Let me just get this out because there's no easy way to explain this. When you're this amateur, and these devices are amateurish at best, they show all the hallmarks of someone who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. One of the things you see in incidents like this in the past is that when you're so amateur, the bomber typically blows himself up. Or there'll be some kind of a signal they let out. They blow up something in an apartment they're constructing and people call the cops. Anyone who has experience in this has seen that before. But you don't see this. No one called the cops. No one obviously busted this guy or woman in advance. So you have these two contrasting bits of information. It's so rookie and amateurish. But then on the other hand, they were delivered and didn't detonate, showing some degree of precision, which says to me that they were intentionally amateurish. It was someone who knew what they were doing and chose to not have them go off. In other words, to terrorize, it's still going to terrorize people, no doubt about that. But there's something about this that makes absolutely no sense. You can't be amateurish, but then have these devices, not all of them not go off, and then nothing happened beforehand.
Misspelled Debbie Wasserman Schultz's last name, misspelled Brennan's last name, got the wrong network when it comes to Brennan. And I also say there was no blasting cap in the package to CNN.
And by the way, what we're looking at now is we're looking at a police vehicle, and we believe that whatever the suspicious package was, it is in that vehicle. Apparently, a call went out at 375 Greenwich Street in Lower Manhattan. The police say this is an office building, not a residence. No one is being displaced.
And it looks like it's being tracked to Tribeca Grill. That's the address of the Tribeca Grill, which is owned by Robert De Niro.
It's the address of Tribeca Films as well, and the restaurant as well. So could that be another one of these devices? We're waiting for a statement from the
Well, and whoever sent these devices, if they didn't know the person's home address, they would send it to what they thought maybe was their place of business. So maybe that was for Robert De Niro.
Right, and a lot of these things went to the offices of various prominent Democrats, although we do understand, in addition to George Soros' home, one of the devices went apparently to the home of Hillary
Hey,
and Bill
Dan, this vehicle, I don't know if you can see it on your screen. What type of a vehicle would that be that would carry away a suspicious package?
You talking to me, Ainsley?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's usually reinforced on the underbelly, and you'll see the angle on the side there where the carriage is in the front of the vehicle, meant to deflect any kind of an explosive force upward, not into the to the driver of the vehicle. But, you know, if these are serious explosives, they're still going to obviously cause a big rattle. But it's the only way to transport these types of devices. They'll bring them up to Rodman's Neck in the Bronx, an area I'm familiar with the NYPD. I trained up there when I was a cop, and they're probably not going to detonate these devices, oddly enough, because they're just a bevy of clues as to who the bomber may have been. Remember, all of these explosive devices leave signatures, the initiators, how they did it, how they put it together, how they constructed it. There are clues everywhere.
Yeah,
you don't usually see this, by the way. You don't usually see so many undetonated devices in an incident like this.
So what do you make of that?
That this guy was either an extreme amateur, or he was an extreme professional pretending to be an amateur who didn't want these devices to go off. That's really the only thing that makes sense. Guys, who puts that kind of type on a mail bomb? The type, the big letters. The big letters are meant to draw attention. It doesn't make any sense. This whole thing was meant to obviously inspire terror and is sick, but I don't think they were meant to go off.
But Dan, it's interesting. You said it doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense in one way. Because we know exactly who everyone's targeted. I mean, my goodness, we have a camera leaving with a mail, which seems to be a package bomb, even though there might not be any blessing material, suspicious package. We're watching it. It was addressed to Robert De Niro, a prominent critic of President Trump, as Eric Holder, as John Brennan, as Hillary Clinton, as Barack Obama, as Maxine Waters. It's Abby Wasserman Schultz was in 2016. So the message is being sent, on behalf, we don't like the way you're treating the president. If that is the message of the malign character that did this, we get it.
Yeah. Well, then it comes down to the who. You know, you have the W's, right? Who, what, when, why, how. And the who is the most important one in this case, because you need motive. You need some kind of motive. You need to determine why they did what they did. I mean, listen, it's clear that there's a pattern here. Anyone ignoring that is just putting a blindfold on. But the question is, why is there a pattern? And nobody knows that as of this point. I mean, they're going to have to narrow this down. I think it's going to be a matter of just days until they have this person. You know, the Unabomber case, which took a long time. Remember, he was tactically strategic. He waited a very long time, and he learned from the construction of each device. That's not what happened here. Right. You have a bevy of unexploded bombs left with clues up in Rodman's Neck that they can all analyze for information. There's no way the person that did this was able to scrub it of all the evidence. Yeah, no way.
This latest package, there's no way the mail service would have delivered it this morning. Do you think someone was just at the restaurant opening the mail early this morning and saw that suspicious package?
Yeah, that sounds likely, because even if it was a private courier, nobody does that at 6:42 Eastern time.
Sure.
It doesn't. Nobody's there. The businesses don't open until 9 o'clock.
But the key is this is another device, apparently a suspicious package delivered to Robert De Niro's building where he has businesses that did not explode. Dan, it did not explode. In the New York Times this morning regarding this, nobody knows at this point who did it, apparently, but the New York Times writes, some bomb technicians who studied photos of the device that circulated on social media that was sent to CNN suggested that the bomb had the hallmarks of fake explosives, the kind more typically depicted on TV shows and in the movies, rather than devices capable of detonating. They write, a digital clock was taped to the middle of the pipe, a feature that experts say is typically shown on fictional bombs in an attempt to ratchet up dramatic tension, but unnecessary in real life. In fact, bomb makers generally avoid attaching visible clocks to their devices to keep from tipping off their targets about when bombs are set to explode. So that just goes to the whole, what exactly was the intent of this device?
Yeah, you're right, Stephen. That's well said by whoever put that out there. The bombs have really two components. They have an explosive material and an initiator. These initiators are real signatures. There's not many ways to initiate an explosive cascade. Okay, there's only a few ways to do it. To put a digital clock on there, you're right, is so amateurish that it almost says that this person wanted the device to be detected as some means to terrorize and get a message out there without having the actual devices detonate, or even in some of these cases appear incapable of doing so.
Now, now the New York Post has something else. They say the pipe bomb sent to CNN appears to include an ISIS parody flag with a phrase on it that says, "Get her done."
Yeah, it's Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm really, really skeptical of about this stuff. This just seems so over the top that it makes you really genuinely curious as to what this motive could have possibly have been. Look at all the factors here. The excessive, overly excessive postage that wasn't even stamped in many cases. In other words, hey, look at me. Right. You have this big type, the big type on these envelopes, again, screaming, look at this envelope, come pull this out. You have this really heavy packaging. You have just ridiculous errors, like the misspelling of John Brennan's name and a package being sent to CNN. He works at a different network. He doesn't work at CNN. Sure. If you were so angry at him to do this ridiculously savage act, you think you'd at least get the network. It just doesn't make any sense. Nothing makes sense in this.
Just one other component to this, and we don't know who did this. We have no idea. But then again, maybe they didn't explode because the bomb maker was really bad at it.
I doubt that, Steve. I'll tell you why. Again, when you see bomb makers that are this bad, dealing with explosive material, black powder, whatever it may be, to the police, or you see these bomb makers blow themselves up. This is pretty common in the field where people have no idea what they're doing. This is so amateurish. I believe it was intentionally amateur.
Dan, he's dealing with the FBI. Whoever did this knows that he's going to be tracked down. There's no way after you send 7, 8, however many packages, and it seems to appear from the same individual, that you're not going to get caught. Do you think this is someone who wants attention or a madman?
Well, Ainsley, here's the issue. We're thinking like rational people. We're not savages like the moron that did this.
Right.
If you're stupid enough and malicious enough and so filled with hate to attack political figures because you disagree with their politics, clearly you're an irrational Looney Tune. Mm-hmm. And you can't view it through the prism of a normal human being. Do they want to get caught? I doubt anybody wants to get caught, but were they doing anything to avoid getting caught? In this case, obviously not. They left up to 9 packages of evidence behind. I'm telling you, there is at least one fingerprint on those packages, and those printing labels are going to be key in tracking this person down.
All right. Hey, Dan, stick around because Judge Napolitano has just come in here. Judge, New York City, again on alert. This is how we started today. Yesterday ended yesterday. This is how we start today.
Well, unfortunately, this may be another day of this. I have to commend Dan. My law enforcement sources are telling me the exact same thing as Dan. This is a head scratcher. This is either an incredibly incompetent person or an incredibly skilled person who wants to appear incompetent. Yeah. Is it a stunt? Is it a dry run? Is it intended to lull us into some false sense of security? It's just powder. It's not a real bomb. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. I don't want to scare people, but this is what law enforcement is speculating. I suspect Dana hears the same speculations as I do, trying to figure this out. And without any, that was my cell phone, I apologize, without any act of violence having been committed, this guy is exposed to a great deal of punishment, life in prison. But because nobody has yet been harmed, the death penalty is not applicable.
And Judge, let us ask this. The New York Times is talking about how it's a possible hoax device, which perhaps was not intended to go off. If it was not intended to go off, it couldn't hurt anybody. It's just something in the mail, isn't it?
Well, this is obviously an effort to send some sort of a political message. This is not terrorism. An act of terror requires 2 acts of violence intended to change the policies of the government. That's the federal statute. But it is terroristic in that it terrifies and it frightens, and it's aimed at a class of people. This guy could be in that class of people, or he could be opposite to them politically.
Right. My question was just if nobody got hurt, are the charges similar?
The charges are identical. The punishment is less because nobody got hurt.
Right.
But they cannot charge him with an act of terrorism until there's violence.
So when this person is caught, where will the trial be, or where, because this happened in Maryland, D.C., Florida, New York?
Usually whatever law enforcement agency gets him first, it'll be between the state and the feds in that state. And if the feds prosecute him, it doesn't matter where he's prosecuted because the penalties are the same, which in this case, again, without death, without violence, is life in prison.
So you know there's been some tension between the FBI and the NYPD, and that's why they formed their own counter-terror division. And I'll ask both of you, first off, who's taking the lead here, and have we seen any of that friction yet? Dan?
I'm sorry, Brian, what was that?
I'm just saying the friction, the historic friction between the FBI and NYPD, who set up their own counter-terror division because of that. Well, Judge, I'll throw it at you. Do you see any friction
No, I don't
yet?
see any friction. You're not going to see any friction. This is so potentially serious that you're going to see. What you will see, there may be some friction.
Who's taking the lead?
I don't know at this time who's taking the lead. From what we see, it's the NYPD. But the FBI often doesn't, Dan knows this better than I, often does not want to be seen. They're doing the more technical behind-the-scenes
Well, Dan,
work.
you mentioned this is, where are they taking this? What
To the
facility?
Bronx Detention Center.
Tell us about that facility.
Yeah, Rodman's Neck. It's a firearms training facility, but they also have bomb techs, a bomb facility up there as well. It's where they send their recruits and their cops to go basically shoot and practice their firearms. But they have facilities there that they can detonate remotely because it's not close to the city proper inside Manhattan. They can detonate some of these devices.
Right. For folks who are just joining us right now, you're looking at one of the New York City Police Department bomb disposal units. It is transporting a suspicious package which was loaded into it within the last 15 minutes or so ago. Somebody called the police this morning in the 6 o'clock hour, we believe, and had them respond to 375 Greenwich. And apparently that is the building where Robert De Niro's Film Fest and Grill, his restaurant, are located. We are speculating that perhaps somebody was going through the mail after that wave of packages yesterday, spotted something, and called the cops. We don't have many details at this point.
I wonder if Robert De Niro, Brian, at the beginning of the show, when we started seeing all of these cop cars down there in the Tribeca area, Brian was saying, oh my gosh, this might be Robert De Niro, just based on clues from who got
Nobody knows
before.
the city the way Kilmeade does. He knows where every celebrity lives.
We know
But
who
I'm
the enemies
wondering,
are.
but I'm wondering if he sent. Because all of these liberals that have come out publicly against President Trump, I'm sure they've had conversations amongst their staffers that open up the mail saying, "Be very careful, just in case I'm a target too." I wonder if he sent.
Well, the odd thing is that this was found at 3 in the morning. I mean, who goes through their mail at 3 in the morning?
That's
How
my
did this
point.
thing
Maybe
get
he
in the
sent,
building?
maybe someone was sent down to the restaurant to go through the mail for this very reason.
As we were all talking about earlier, the areas in Manhattan